let's be clear about this. Ideas are cheap and they're simple. You know, I can sit down and think of an idea and it takes me that long. But it's only the implementation of that idea, only the skill of the people that you work with that really brings that idea to fruition. For me, a God game is about freedom. It's about a freedom to approach the world in any way you want.
There are no limits. You can't, there's no, you never say, I can't do this and I can't do that.
It feels like a big sort of clockwork machine in a way, if that makes sense. And it's nice that you go in there and tinker with things and change settings.
If you want to rip a tree out of the ground, you can do it. If you want to change the weather, you can do it.
And see how that sort of affects the sort of ecosystem of everything.
And that is the heart of what a God game should be. It should allow you to do things, to experiment with things, to experiment with approaches, but that freedom gives you a sense of power. And that's what God games should be all about.
A meeting I had with Peter about 3 years ago, and he said he was working on this new game idea, Masters of Albion, and he wanted this to be like a mixture of all the previous games we'd ever worked on, all the big hits that we'd done. Dungeon Keeper, Fable, Black and White was a big inspiration. So he wanted a mixture of all those games in this one game. It was almost like a legacy type game.
I mean, it's interesting to be working on a God game that's obviously mixing genres, so the God aspect, I guess, is like the wrapper for it all, but the fact that you've kind of got what you'd consider traditional godlike mechanics where you're sort of, looking down on the landscape, but then you can go right in there and actually literally possess a hero or a character or a chicken.
So there's two things to say about the God game genre. The first thing to say is it's a withering genre of game. It's a small percentage of that pie chart of all games that people play. And for me, that would be incredibly sad to see it wither to nothing. And if we're going to reinvigorate it, then there has to be something special, there has to be something new, there has to be something fresh and innovational about what we present to the player. And that's what I believe Masters of Albion is.
So I think one of the things that I kind of obsess about a little bit, and that was what I kind of wanted to bring to the project when I joined, really, was sort of emphasising the kind of miniature feel of it. Although you can go in sometimes and possess the characters, so you're in the world. When you're more in God mode, I like the idea of it almost feeling like a sort of Warhammer style miniature or something that's on a table that's animating. When I'm talking with other artists, we sort of use nicely sculpted figures and things as the sort of reference point rather than realistic looking humans. And sometimes it's a bit of a struggle because, someone like Pete would be like, okay, let's use realistic looking hair. And I'm like, no, you're kind of missing the point of what the idea is here. They're supposed to be like sculpted characters, you don't have a sculpted character with like real hair on it. If you turned up to your Warhammer night with like, your human hair sculpted on your barbarians, you'd probably get kicked out for being some kind of weirdo, wouldn't you? I don't know. I mean, there's some examples of, I was doing some of the action blocks for the game, which are like the sort of machine part of the buildings, like for the windmill, for example. So I had to go and research, like, how do you actually make flour from wheat and stuff? So I learned all about how millstones work and had to invent my own mini version of that. So that's kind of fascinating. Creativity in general tends to be born from restrictions, I would argue. Like I like music, I've got my music studio, but I can boot up a a sound package like Logic or something, and there's so many buttons and so many things to twiddle, you can just get lost in that and end up doing nothing. Whereas you give me like a basic tape recorder and a microphone and say, right, you've got to make a song, probably going to have more chances of making something with that, to be honest with you, because there's a lot more limitation and restriction.
Every game that I ever do, the first thing that I do is get the ambient sound bed sounding realistic. So that's all the birds tweeting, all the countryside sounding good, all the rivers and streams, everything that makes a world come to life. That's the first thing that I approach. The big challenge is going from music which forms the bed of the game. So you've got all your ambient type music moving between different regions. So that's all your sort of your bed of ambient style music. This game also has a very script-led storytelling way of taking you through the game, so that you're not just playing the game as a god, you're also watching this story unfold. Each of those story elements obviously needs script-based music. So how we blend between that ambient bed I was just talking about into the script-based music is one of the biggest challenges for me, because I don't want it to feel like stop that piece of music, start this piece of music. I want it to actually blend in so that it feels like it's all part of the same story. I always approach anything that I do based on what I'm imagining first, and then I try to achieve that with the software and the tools that I've got. I never like to just sit down and play.
When I feel like I'm coming up with my most creative ideas and things, it's just because I'm playing with something and the ideas kind of pop out of that. I'm not sitting there pondering on a chair beforehand what my idea is.
Always starts with imagination and imagining what you're trying to achieve. And if I don't have that, I have nothing.
It's the process of doing and playing where the things emerge, so I think that's really important. You know, I like slapstick kind of humour and brash kind of things. So the idea of contrasting a very cute, kind of cosy, chilled thing with sudden extreme violence and utter chaos.
This one is a catapult. This one's a trebuchet. They're all different. Depending on which top you put on top of a turret, depends on which sound you get in the game. But obviously all these are given 3D values. I can actually tell it at what distance it starts to fade out and at what distance you don't hear it at all. I like the places by the babbling brooks, if you like. I like those areas where it just feels peaceful and calm. I also like the areas up in the mountains where it just feels quite cold, but also just free, you know, freedom to be up there.
Here we are at St Martha's Church, just outside Guildford, this beautiful place. I find really inspirational, especially when thinking about God games, because you can see over there's a little village, and that's full of life, it's full of bustling life, but I'm up here, I've got this God's view, and I can imagine reaching out with my hand can almost cover that whole village, and plucking a little house up and moving it over there, and that is the essence of what a God game is. And it's views like this that have really inspired me about that scale, the scale of going from the intimate, from going to where you can see a leaf on a tree, up to this God view, and nothing more inspirational than this view. Are we all here? We are all here.
Daniel, do you want to start off connected just so you can run through the mandate board?
Yeah, I mean, Peter, you added a lot of P1s recently, so this list looks a bit bigger now.
Are you anything you're worried about?
I mean, I'm always going to be worried about the quantity of things that are on there still, obviously, with the little time left. I think it's just making sure we understand what's most important and order everything correctly. But yeah, that's my main worry.
And the other thing that it's always been a little bit of a mystery to me, but maybe the coders in the group have got an idea of like, I don't know when it's supposed to be locked with the April date, but when was going to be the lock as in like no one's allowed to change anything now, it's just pure bug fixing.
That was last month, Mark. So that was last month.
If we are forced into,
obviously we are not doing that though. So.
Well, that's because you keep adding stuff to the game, Mark. You and your team, you keep adding stuff. We can't stop. We can't lock until you stop adding stuff.
What am I adding?
well, the chicken building.
Oh yeah.
New Lake Mountain, that's changed quite a bit.
New armour. It's just more and more stuff, and more stuff keeps going in, and we can't possibly say we're locked until more and more stuff is not going in.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, we're almost there with that.
Yeah.
So the last time I was here was, I think, at the end of Black and White, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning, round about that time. This is the only place that's open, and all of us came down to celebrate the game going gold master.
Yeah, because we'd worked through the night.
Yeah, we worked through the night. I had probably bacon, sausage, eggs, chips, fried toast, ham, mushrooms, probably the full works.
I probably did as well.
Yeah.
Or I had a croissant or something like that.
Do they do croissants here?
Yeah, like
a very croissant.
like cheese and ham croissant.
They used to laugh at you when you ordered it.
Yeah, probably. It's like we've never been
No,
apart.
it's true.
It just slotted in so easily coming back together.
Yeah, and I think it is just the trust. I have absolute trust in you guys, and in what you do, and everything that you do is of amazing quality.
Yeah, for me it's just nice to be able to work in that way that, well, I've always worked for most of my time in the games industry, but it's becoming rarer and rarer, I think, and certainly if you go to like a big corporate company or something, they can't embrace this.
They can't.
You
There's
can't
a
have-
level of paranoia there that is
Well, and they have to
destructive as
plan,
hell.
everything has to be like pre-agreed and
Yeah.
backed up by data and all this sort of stuff, and by the time you get to that you've forgotten what you were even talking about anyway. So
Yeah.
it's just horrible.
I have got the ultimate defence strategy for my
Is it
town.
turrets?
If you feast yourself on turrets, you're just being very lazy.
Well, that's
and
what
you're
I'm
not
doing.
using the game.
I did embrace the idea of just moving my turrets
Yeah.
around. I'd sort of almost forgotten that you could do that.
And you can, you see all these creatures coming towards you, just put a wall in front of them.
Yeah,
What's
that
the
works.
problem? Well, you're done, especially if the wall's part of it. That is such a unique element in the game, I think.
I actually thought I'd beaten the game actually when we were doing the playthrough before, because I found the giant rubber duck.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful.
Yeah.
And I was using it just to crush
Yeah,
it. But
no, that
then
is-
it
that
runs
is-
out of health and dies, so I was really gutted.
That is very satisfying.
I mean, by the time I get to some of those bigger fights, I've already combined my buildings with turrets. Like, I
the
don't have
turrets.
standalone turrets at that point.
So with the combat music, that's my big push for March. That's going to be, because I think that's going to be the big win for the game, is make the combat feel more dramatic.
Especially, and you're brilliant at doing this, Russell, if we start to telegraph the end of the combat.
Yeah.
So if you can get a little bit more dramatic as you get towards the end, and then as you're mopping up the last few creatures, then
Yeah.
maybe the music.
The code is
settles down.
all there. Gary's done all the code.
Yeah.
It's ready, and it builds up in five levels. So I'm just going to do that. I remember sitting around a meeting talking about Syndicate, and you felt your leg, and you, oh my God, you said I've got this huge bump on my leg. And you put your hand up your trouser leg and you pulled out a sock from from the previous night.
Being a designer, being an entrepreneur, being a person that talks in the press, being a person that looks at the accounts is like being a multi-personality schizophrenic. As a designer, you want to put everything in the game. You don't care about the money. You don't care about the time. You just want the best you can possibly get. But as an entrepreneur, you realize that you've got limited resources. And there is one resource that trumps everything else. And that resource is not money, it's boredom. If you develop a game for too long, the team that you're working with just get bored of it. And no one is creative when they're bored. I use games to escape this world, to escape the pressures and turmoils in this world. And to do that, you need to relax players. Yes, it's important to have a game with exciting moments, but if it's too button twitchy all the time, it's not going to be a relaxing experience. And there is this the psychology of getting the brain into an alpha state. It's a highly relaxed state where you don't have the voices in your head saying, yeah, what about the bills? What about the kids? What about the school? You just have the focus on the game. And I've strived to do that in almost every game I've done. One of my big motivations is to give everyone at 22 Cans the experience of releasing a game that brings joy. That's really what we want. That brings joy to people. If we can bring joy to people, then I'm sure the game will be successful. And I want everybody here to get that feeling of when they're sitting on the bus and talking to a total stranger and they say, I've worked on Masters of Albion. Masters of Albion, that was brilliant. I loved that. I loved it. There is this, it feels like a brick wall that I'm approaching. I have no idea what's on the other side of the brick wall. Because what will happen to my mind when it doesn't have this thing to obsess over? This thing to send me to sleep every night thinking of an idea. This creative vision to shepherd through from start to finish. What happens if you don't have that? I don't know, maybe I'll go a bit crazy. Maybe I'll go on some tropical beach somewhere and have my last few days sitting in the sun. I doubt it though.